Thank you for joining us today on Louder Than Green. Today we have a very exciting guest, and if you're building anything sustainable, regenerative, or just smarter than the status quo, you're in the right place. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Green That Dream, and we specialize in helping businesses not just go green, but flourish. We focus on strategies that support people, planet, and profits by improving operations and managing resources. So if you're ready to take your business to the next level, stick around. And if you want a free growth consultation, head over to greenthatdream.com or just DM us the word growth. Now let's get into it. Welcome everyone to Louder Than Green. I am here today with Jason Freeman. He is the founder and CEO of FarmerDirect Organic, which is a certified organic food brand focused on grains, seeds, and legumes built around traceability, fair pricing, and long-term relationships with family farms. He has been working in the organic food space for more than 2 decades and originally co-founded FarmerDirect Co-op to address transparency and pricing issues for organic farmers. Jason is widely known for building farmer-owned and farmer-centered supply chains, advocating for fair trade practices in domestic agriculture, and helping bring regenerative organic products to market. His work sits at the intersection of food, ethics, and real-world supply chain execution. Welcome, Jason. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we also have my husband, who we are calling Haas. Thanks for being here today, Haas. He's going to be joining our podcast
Hello.
and doing more of these with us. So he also has a background in food. He's a chef and the whole food movement as well. So hopefully we get a bit of his insight in this conversation. So Jason, let's jump into it. Please tell us a bit about FarmerDirect Organic. Describe what that is for our listeners and what the business is actually, what it actually does from farm to shelf.
So FarmerDirect Organic is a concept that started back in 2002 with 3 farmers and myself, and we formed a cooperative. I managed the sales, marketing, and logistics, and we were primarily selling truckloads of, say, certified organic lentils to organic food companies like Amy's Kitchen, for example. And then in 2011, we came out with the FarmerDirect Organic brand, or the FarmerDirect Co-op brand. That was really interesting because we went through the financial collapse of 2009, and the commodity markets, whether it's organic, conventional, totally went upside down. Demand dried up, prices crashed. And so we figured we needed to develop a more secure, a higher margin market. And so that's why we decided to launch the brand. We didn't have much money because of the financial collapse. So we figured what we could do is we could bag our crops in 25-pound bags, certified organic lentils, beans, peas, oats, and then palletize them and sell them to retail or bulk bins. So we did that. And we also decided that in order to have like good differentiation, and because we felt it was the right thing to do, we were the first national brand that became certified to domestic fair trade standards. So we launched as 100% farmer-owned, 100% organic, and 100% domestic fair trade, which we actually called the Fair Deal. So about 2 years went by. In 2013, Whole Foods came knocking, and they said, "We love what you're doing." And so we're like, well, this is great. This is awesome. We figured it'd be whatever, a few pallets a month. No big deal.
Yeah.
Remember, we're up in Saskatchewan. There's no Whole Foods market.
Yeah.
We understood who they were, but we didn't really understand who they were. And so it ended up being 5 to 7 truckloads a year, about $8 million in total sales value, like for the co-op. Very profitable. It got us completely out of debt, turned things around. And what we found really gratifying was, and FarmerDirect Co-op started, basically it was partnership between an organic consumer, myself, an urban organic consumer, and rural organic family farms. And so I tended to create products which I would want to consume because that's all I knew, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have the tens of thousands of dollars you can spend on focus groups and things like that. We did a little bit of that, but not that level. And after we launched too. And what was really gratifying is that consumers really were like, yeah, awesome. This is what we want. Sold by the farmers, so we can trust the integrity. They only do organic, so more integrity. and they, it's fair trade. So this is, as organic consumer, this is what we hoped organics would evolve to after the 2002 USDA national law. And what was extra cool was we had no marketing budget. We had nothing. We had no marketing budget. But what happened in store is this is what the buyers at Whole Foods Market told us, is the younger people in store started doing all these chalkboards, right? With 100% farmer owned, 100% fair deal, all this stuff. And they really embraced it. So that's an important thing. If anyone's watching this and they have a brand and they want to get into retail, and you're small, you do not have enough money to market. You just don't. You don't. Do not, like, whatever you think, you do not have enough money to compete. So you have to compete, should I say, culturally in that sense. You have to
Sure.
really elevate your brand, create that differentiation, essentially do the right thing, and the consumer will reward you. Yeah, so that's basically the origin story of FarmerDirect. I left the co-op after 14 years in 2016 because of the complexity of running a retail brand. The farmers asked, like, in 2018, they said, "Will you buy the brand from us, but still run our grain through the brand?" And I was like, "Okay, let's do that." And then in 2001, I sold the brand. I bought the brand back from that group. It's just a really interesting story because I can't get rid of it. It keeps coming back to me, and so I've come to terms and peace with the fact that it's not really just a brand; it's a concept.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a philosophy, and you're going to be stuck with it until you take it to its X conclusion. And then for me, really what that is eventually not selling it to a venture cap, but actually selling it to the farmers.
Yeah.
So kind of going full circle. And I'd say we're probably 50% of the way there. The investment that I raised for this iteration of FarmerDirect Organic has only been from farmers, not from even my bank, not
Oh,
from venture cap, none of that, which was really refreshing. It was a matter of a few phone calls, not
yeah.
like, 18 months of due diligence and then people just raking you over the coals, but you need the capital now, not like 18 months. And it's just that whole thing of trying to raise money and trying to sell your company. That's a whole other rabbit hole
Yeah.
for another time. And basically the third launch of the brand is going really well. We're selling, if you want to support the brand, we're selling ROC, so regenerative organic certified, gluten-free, tested clean to over 200 pesticide, traceable back to the family farm, packaged oats. As a mouthful, but at Sprouts
Yeah.
Market, you can find it online, and it's starting to get out to the other independents. That's really what we're focusing on as a natural foods channel. We're not too interested in selling the brand to mass market grocers. Maybe we will. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Right now, the strategy is to really focus on the independents, the small chains, the larger natural food chains, but just there because there's about 25 to 30,000 doors that you can get into, and a differentiated brand is going to do well there, right? That's where the early adopters are. That's where the educated consumers are, and I think that if we ever did mass market, it'd probably be private label. I don't know if it would be the
Sure.
brand. So it's just a lot. I'm just throwing this out here because you probably have a lot of people that run brands or starting brands or whatnot, and
Right.
these are all things that you really have to consider your markets. One of our strengths too, and I think the reason why the relaunch of the brand is doing well because our reps are like, this isn't in like Kroger's, like Bob's Red Mill is. This isn't in the mainstream. We're really focusing on your markets because we feel our target consumers who understands this and want to support the mission. And so what is that mission, right? So we first started out as 100% farmer owned, 100% organic, 100% domestic fair trade. And now it's changed slightly to it's still 100% farmer owned because I've moved to a farm essentially. So I'm farming. I wouldn't call myself a farmer. I'd call myself maybe a hobby farmer or an apprentice farmer. But last week I was in the chicken coop shoveling shit and putting on
Yeah.
the compost. So I'm like, okay, well, so where's the definition? All of the investment we've received so far has been farmers. I want to keep it like that and eventually sell to farmers when I get older, retire, whatever that means, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Also, 100% certified organic. We do not sell conventional grain. We do not sell premium grain. We do not sell natural grain, which is all just BS of conventional grain. That's, some lipstick was thrown on in nice packaging, but it's still the same desiccated grown with synthetic fertilizer, grain. It's just better marketed. So we only do certified organic. And through the ROC certification, there is a fair trade aspect to it. So we do have some farms with labor, for example. The auditor goes out to those farms and does audit them to a pretty robust standard, and is pretty happy about that. I think we will eventually get separate domestic fair trade certification, just to really put like an explanation mark on that, because agriculture needs to become fair. It can be fair. There's a tremendous amount of exploitation in agriculture, even to the point of slavery. It depends what supply chains you have.
Yeah.
We have a whole friggin' nightmare in our society with immigration, whether you call it undocumented people or illegal immigration. Right? The point is that because of economic reasons, they're being pushed up into the US. I'm not advocating for either way. What I'm saying is it's a bad situation and people are caught in the middle. So there definitely needs to be immigration reform. But part of that too is it's complex. I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole, is that agricultural policy has a tremendous effect on this immigration issue. And how it
Mm.
is because through agricultural subsidies, specifically on corn and soy, and on wheat and the commodity crops, US multinationals are dumping this grain in other markets. So it's Latin America, for example, which makes it almost impossible for farmers in those countries to compete. And so they go broke. They have labor. You're talking about millions of people, millions of farms. And now they're like, well, what do we do? These are where the jobs are. This is what we know to do. We know how to be like agricultural laborers. If you stop the subsidies or you had some sanity to the subsidies, it would go a long way, I think, to solving that issue. You allow the farmers in the Southern Hemisphere and Latin America to actually compete. Well, they're going to have jobs in their country, right, of origin. You're not going to have this crazy immigration. So essentially, it's skilled poor people. Let's call it what it is, right?
Yeah.
They're very
Yeah,
skilled.
exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
respected, that labor, like it should be. And they're caught in the middle of this. So that's why the fair trade, I feel, is very important, to verify that your supply chains are truly, I feel, ethically, right, and morally. So 100% farmer owned, 100% organic. That's all the brand does. We have the fair trade aspect through ROC, which isn't 100% through our supply chain. We're getting to that point. It'll take us about another 24 months. And everything's tested, certified, tested, cleaned over 200 pesticide residues. And then it's all traceable back to the family farm. So we're getting like tremendously positive feedback from the market. Essentially, our oats are selling well in a very crowded oat market, right?
Yeah. Where
Yeah.
are your farmers mostly located?
So our farmers are mostly located in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Okay.
With the beans, there's a few in, say, Minnesota.
Okay.
And one item we get from a farm in Mexico, which is chickpeas. So, but it's all traceable. We're moving
Yeah.
our chickpea production to Canada. But I'm like, these are things I have to kind of like think really through, right? They grow great organic chickpeas in Mexico, and they have like, I think, a fantastic organic community there. Of course, there's a lot of
That's
issues in Mexico also, right, with agriculture. So it's like, I just think it's good to support the farmers that are doing the right thing.
yeah, that's surprising with the organic farms in Mexico. I was just learning about chickpeas specifically and glycophosphate. Is that an issue with,
Yeah. Oh,
that
everything,
grain
all
with
grain
everything?
crops, all grain
Yeah.
crops. The only one where it's improving, and I think what you're referring to is desiccation with glyphosate or Roundup.
Yeah.
And so just for the viewers, because farms started getting so big, they had to time their harvest as opposed to just waiting for the first frost, or for plants to die off. So they go in there with the desiccant, basically in this case herbicide. And what it does, it kills the plant. So then you can go harvest the grain.
Makes it easier.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. The problem is now you have like residue directly on the stuff you're about to harvest. Typically, farmers would use glyphosate or Roundup before GMOs for a pre-planting burn off of the weeds that come up. After they came out with the GMO crops, then it would be in-field spraying. But that was during the growing season. So the residues would affect the soil, but they wouldn't necessarily be on the end grain. Now, because of desiccation, it's like right on the grain that's about to be milled. Like literally, they desiccate 1 to 2 weeks before they harvest. So when the grain is fully formed in the pod, people in urban environments don't necessarily know about this. And I think desiccation is going to become more prominent as an issue that people want to stay away from. And hence, that's why you see a lot of these pesticide testing certifications coming out, like Tested Clean or Detox Project or whatnot. One thing I would like to talk about that, though, and the difference between our pesticide program and the detox program or these other glyphosate certifications is I object to the terminology glyphosate free. And the reason I do is because nothing's free of residues. We get the occasional crop, which is free of those residues, but most there is some residue. So the Detox Project and the glyphosate free people, they test down to a 10 part per billion. Now, awesome, right? It's essentially
Yeah.
free. And maybe I'm just splitting hairs. We actually test down to 1 part per billion. I'm not on here to go like, we're better, we're better. What I'm trying to convey is that let's not delude ourselves. The world is hyper polluted.
For sure.
Farmers are doing the right thing. There's still going to be some residue
Because it's
on the
just
grain.
through in the airstream, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
With air and water and
Yeah, like we just got results from some of the oats that we're doing. Excellent results. I think it was 2.97 parts per billion, of glyphosate. But there's still the residue on there. But it would have made the glyphosate free certification level, right? But I still like it's again, like, kind of reiterate, we should not run away from these things. We should not deny them with their language or our marketing. We should
Sure.
acknowledge them and go, okay, this is an issue. We need to support the farmers that aren't spraying. And, this is transparently what the heck's going on. Okay, so now we can see it. I don't want to alarm people either, though, to, parts per billion. It's like, we're doing okay. The issue I see with all of this is that we're so reductionist in our scientific approach in our society that we're like, well, the EPA says that, under 10, I think, their parts per million, glyphosate is safe. Okay, fine. Let's even assume that that is the case. Well, nothing's in isolation. There's 80,000 different patented synthetic chemicals out there that are in everyday lives. What happens when 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 different pesticides residues that are present? What do they do in your blood? What about all the fire retardants? How do they work with the glyphosate in your blood and your body?
yeah.
And the answer is, well, definitively, we can't say exactly, but we can say, look at
We
the
don't
rise of
know.
chronic diseases. Like, we know enough, right? We can see it. So, and then the other thing that's just, I know I'm kind of rambling on, going through the rabbit hole, but I just find insane is like we brainwash ourselves in our society to accept that growing food and using things that kill living things, whether it's insects
Yeah.
or weeds, is so counterintuitive. How did we get to that place? It's cognitive
That's a good
dissonance.
question.
And it's because people don't take their food seriously enough. We need to start taking
Yeah.
our food more seriously. And when I say that, there's a lot of people that do. So it's super encouraging. Yeah.
So I have a question about
Okay.
it's the detoxing of the grains, right? Like there's no method in which that can be washed off of the product before testing that would improve its test results, or
I haven't heard of this.
yeah.
But you bring up a really interesting point, because if there's an opportunity for fraud, some people will take it. And that's the thing, right?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
with these detox, like glyphosate free and detox project and tested clean, it's all being done by early adopters. So I can tell you
right.
right now, and these companies are great. I know some of them.
Sure.
Once larger mainstream companies or mainstream brokers and things like that start taking these things on, then it's like, yeah, that's a really good question. Is there a way to cheat? I don't think there is, because a lot of these pesticides are systemic, so they're not just on the
Yeah,
surface. They get into the plant matter on a cellular level.
yeah,
But I think you'll see more fraud in the sense of just falsified test results.
sure.
So, and again, right, the consumers out there, it's not just a certification; it's the brand. Who are you really supporting? Like, can you trust them? Are they a small
Uh-huh.
brand that are mission based? Do they have a track record? Are they working directly with farmers? How do they really source their products? These are all super important things. So if you can combine the certification and the company together, you're probably doing really well and going to get some super high quality food as an organic consumer.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely appreciate the labels and whatnot, but I'm sure you've heard, the rhetoric of people thinking, "Oh, organic is just a label. It doesn't really mean anything." I mean, what do you think about that? And do you think that there are different levels of organic or different,
Oh,
I don't know, how do we
so
know that, you know,
yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. I think one best case scenario for agriculture is that there's a transition from conventional GMO agriculture to industrial organic, right? And we saw that after the 2002 NOP USDA seal came out. So, but just for your viewers, just a refresher, in 2002, the U.S. government passed the organic rule. So now the USDA seal meant something nationally, that this is like production standards based on these organic principles. Once that happened, like at 2002, it was a really good system. It was really family farms. It was real. There's no confinement of livestock. It was good stuff. And then the corporations realized that, well, we can manipulate the rules so that we can actually have large confined organic dairies in the middle of the friggin' desert that, is growing hay through irrigation, for example. And so that happened. The pushback against that, I think organics really exploded after 2002. On the dairy side, Organic Valley, if you guys are familiar with them, did really, really well versus Horizon Dairy and some of these industrial organic dairies. And they did really well because they told their story of their farmers, which a third of them are very small, like Amish scale farmers. And then what's super important too, and the proof is in the pudding, is that their quality was exceptional because it was from smaller farms, because it was a farmers co-op, not necessarily a large corporation, just like let's standardize organics and right. Um, and so that has to translate too. All these certifications and ethic has to transfer into higher quality food. It should, right? If your sourcing protocol is really, really as you say it is. What we've noticed too, which is like super gratifying, is I get calls, emails all the time out of the blue, like emails out of the blue from consumers that buy our products and are just saying like, "What did you do to them? This is great. I've never tasted oatmeal this good before." It's like, and
that's what we need to get our kids.
yeah. And then, so I had a bag that was 6 months old and I just wanted to try it, right? I made up some steel cut oats and I was like, wow, this is really good. This is really good. So when you grow anything and soil, which is super healthy and fertile, meaning that it has tremendous biodiversity of the microbiome, it's going to be more nutrient dense and therefore it's going to taste better. And some oats are still desiccated too. Some national brands, like one of our competitors, got into a whole scandal because their oats tested super high in glyphosate. And it really didn't seem like they gave a shit. Since then, some of the mills have been coming down on farmers and in their contracts says no desiccation. But it's not that they're so like desiccation is bad. They're like, well, desiccation, it dries out the oats too much, so we lose processing yield when we roll them. So that's why they don't want desiccation. The whole thing about pesticide residue and whatnot, they care somewhat, but not like the organic community.
Right. How are you structuring your relationships with farmers? And like, is it that been a positive thing that's grown over the years, or has it become more challenging with like conventional ag growing?
No, it's been really good. The biggest issue is just the integrity of your supply chains. The market's there,
Yeah,
the demand is there. And when I mean
right.
the integrity of supply chain, it's just, there's a lot of certifications and a lot of testing that we have to go through before we can actually put the product on the market. And then you have to get it out there. You have to have the sales reps. There's just a lot to manage a brand, but the latent demand's there. Consumers want this. And, we're seeing that success. A bunch of other brands that are in our space are seeing that success too. I really think it is the way forward for small brands. Really, really like
Yeah,
focus on your supply, the integrity of your supply, and if you can communicate that story properly, you'll be rewarded.
that's great. I mean, that's so great to hear. So you guys are mostly in Canada. Are your plans to be expanding into the United States?
We sell all of our product into the US. Well, 95% of our product goes to US retailers. We source some beans from US farmers and we're probably going to source lentils from U.S. farmers as our demand increases. What I'm really looking for, though, and how I'm structuring it, because you asked about, well, how you structuring it with farmers. So some of the farmers
Yeah.
I've been working with, I've been marketing their grain for over 20 years. I've been to their farms, I've seen their operations, totally know what's going on. I'm partnering with, well, the first one in particular, it's Linden Valley Organics. It's a farm out of Kamsack, Saskatchewan. They're putting in the processing infrastructure. So, for example, we just put in a brand new 25-pound bagging line. It's a thing of beauty. It's like totally get to nerd out on it. It's like, so where I'm going to with the farmers, I'm saying, okay, let's create hubs. Okay, let's create nodes. You invest into X amount of processing for something. So this one's very simple because it's where we're at right now. It's a 25-pound bagging for our bulk bin grains. And then eventually probably like 1 pound packaging or consumer packaging would be at that farm. He grows a lot of the lentils that we're putting into the brand. So you'd have like what I'm trying to create is vertical integration on the farm. Once the volume grows beyond that, then it becomes a hub for the other farmers in our network to, bring the grain in, get it clean, processed and packaged, and then ship out. We talked a little bit about FarmerDirect's gluten strategy. It's the same thing. I'm talking to a few farmers about putting the processing on their farm or in their town, but essentially controlling everything from growing it to milling it to packaging it. And then we ship it out. And then it becomes, again, a hub for wheat farmers and the heritage grain farmers that we have in our network. And one reason, the one that's super important, is because freight rates have increased so much that pre-COVID, we had these things called value chains. So value chain is like, well, you get it from this farm, it goes to this cleaner, and then it goes to this miller, and then it goes to this co-packer. Well, you could do that when it wasn't too expensive for shipping, but now that's
Yeah.
prohibitive. So you really want to have everything under one roof if you can. And then that also impacts your ability to control quality. So
100%.
that's so FarmerDirect as a brand, as a mission, let's say,
Yeah.
the mission is to really create that direct from farmer vertical integration on farm, so the farmers are in control of the means of production, which I hate that term because I'm not a communist. Sorry, I was a little kind of
No.
offside. I tend to be apolitical in the sense that what follows ideology is usually really bad stuff, whether it's capitalism, socialism, communism, totalitarianism, so, so creating these hubs from the farmers control everything, they control the quality. My job is branding and sales. So, I take a
Yeah.
commission on that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, like you're talking earlier about you guys being a concept, right? So, conceptually, like, wouldn't it make sense to set up a lot of these all over, right?
Yeah, totally.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That's the
and
absolute. Well, if you look at what's the future of food, right? Is the future of
yeah,
food some massive flour mill in the Midwest shipping everywhere? Or is it
everywhere.
actually
Yeah.
like, 100
Like
smaller
decentralized.
farms? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's the decentralized, there's so much, the internet has created so much opportunity for direct contact with consumers for that type of template to work. Where I see it really started to take off is direct consumer beef.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ranchers that figured it out, especially like close to large population centers, especially where they don't have to ship across state lines or provincial lines, because then they get you on the whole like, well, it's got to be federally inspected. That
Yeah.
as brings upon a tremendous amount of cost, probably more transportation because there's not a federally inspected abattoir near you. It's just like barriers to entry, and then people for farmers or farmer co-ops or farmer-owned businesses, and people want to know why the cow-calf operators and beef in America is in crisis now, why the herds are lower than they've ever been in like 30 or 40. The solution to food quality and farmer profitability is farmer control.
Right.
That's just getting right down to nitty-gritty. For that to happen, though, farmers need allies. So they need people in the supply chain like me who share that ethic, but will help with some of the nuances and, getting these things in the market, dealing with buyers. The paperwork alone is crazy. Each distributor is different. The food safety regulations, yada, right, all the up to the end consumer. So that's solution. Are we going to get there before we have a complete crash? Maybe that's what comes after the crash. Like I'm just don't understand how we can come this far and where the system still doesn't crash. Like the level of chronic diseases, diabetes, obesity, and mainly from our food supply.
Yeah.
People's families are being impacted. People are dying. People that sell this food, executives in these large, multinational food companies, have had relatives that have died from food-based diseases too. So there's a huge cognitive dissonance, and it usually is tied to money, right? In the sense that this is how people make their living, and you try to change that. No, sometimes things have to crash before people are forced to change that, unfortunately.
Well, it's like the smoking. I can't remember what it was. It's like 40 something years and over 7,000 studies
Yeah.
before they actually said, hey, smoking causes cancer. And still look at people and
Yeah.
what they're doing with it, so.
And then you have the Maha
It's-
movement too, which is super interesting because, of course, that's super politicized because of the Trump administration. And it's like, well, what do you trust? What don't you trust? I think JFK's or RFK is being sincere. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I'm not trying to offend
Yeah.
anybody. But, the criticism of Maha is that it's like, small changes. The Maha supporters are like, well, like, I don't think these are such small changes, taking some of these totally crazy carcinogenic ADHD, producing dyes out of food,
Yeah.
that they're not in Canada, they're not in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are they in America? So I have a question, like regarding, and this might be somewhat, like I don't know. What's the difference between like the organic regulation, like from Canada to the US to Mexico? And is that like prohibitive to like how you source your farming and things in that?
It's not. I can say that the Canadian regulation is closer to the European regulation, which is superior to the US regulation. There's been a tremendous amount of corporate lobbying to push down the US regulation. I don't think they've been successful, but they've been a little bit successful. And that's basically the differentiation point. You'll see, I'm not a huge policy wonk. So, I think things like parallel production, they allow under the USDA, they don't allow under core, which is Canada organic regulations. I need to research that to make sure I'm not just telling fibs. But a parallel production for your viewers is you have a farm that has organic and conventional acres, and they grow, say, wheat or lentils on both of those acres. So they have conventional wheat and organic wheat. That's not allowed under certain regulations. It's not allowed under the Regenerative certified regulations for good reason. So, small, really esoteric things like that. But there is a bit of a difference. So with grains, though, it's been easy. And we don't, by rule, we don't purchase grain from farms that have organic and conventional land. We just like working with people that are 100% certified organic. So yeah,
Makes it
and
easier.
answer your question, not too difficult. They changed the rules though, which I'm in favor of because there's a tremendous amount of fraud coming in from offshore into the US market, and there's a bunch of domestic fraud. So they made the paperwork, you have to get import permits now, which is good. You didn't have that before. You have to be a certified entity before non-certified brokers could bring in organic grain. And so I think that's helping to get rid of a bunch of fraud. Again, right? It's one of the reasons why we're doing the pesticide testing into so many different pesticides. Is that we really want to root out any fraud in our supply chain. And the easiest way to root out fraud is test for pesticides. We've had grain sent to us from brokers. We work with brokers too. They have to guarantee transparency so we know what farm is coming from, but we still test everything, obviously. The only time we've come up with like, okay, this is obviously conventional grain was from brokers, conventional grain posing as organic. So if that was my experience with brokers, that's everyone's experience with brokers in the sense that there's, right? It's very tough, gets tantalizing, I guess you could say, when you just have to like forge some documents and you can double the price that you're getting, right? So that's Again, that's why we have full traceability, site testing, 100% organic brand, right? So that's the mission of organic integrity is resonating with consumers. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's like the most challenging part of your guys' operation?
For me, to tell you the truth, because we're just starting out, it's the building up inventory enough so that we're right on time always with our shipments to our distributors. And what kind of prevents us from that too is that we have to wait till the product's tested before we ship. 90% of the time, right? Sometimes we'll ship we may get the results a week later, but because it's from farmers that we've been working with for a long time, we trust it. And also, to clean isn't a pass fail. It's not like, okay, well, it's this level of glyphosate or we reject the crop. We've never accepted anything that's over 40 parts per billion. 95% of the grain we get is below that 10 part per billion on the glyphosate. But the reason being is these glyphosate testing programs shouldn't penalize organic farmers. So if you have residue from your neighbor, which is usually always the case, and it's up around that 30 or 40 parts per billion, anything else, you start to get suspicious, right? That is a really organic grain. And so then it's like, okay, you tested. So we want you to do a few things, corrective actions, put more signage up on your fields so your neighbors know that this is an organic field. Don't spray near it. Also talk to your neighbors about it. Ask them, just don't spray when it's windy, guys. And so instead of just going, oh, sorry, organic farm, you've been doing everything right for 20 years, we're rejecting your crop, screw you. And it's like, okay, your test a little high, so talk to your neighbors. And that also facilitates a tremendous amount of communication at the farm gate in communities too, where conventional farmers and organic farmers didn't necessarily get along because there's a lot of misunderstanding. Now it's coming to the point in a lot of these communities where the conventional farmers have respect for the organic farmers. They, understand that they're making more money, that it tends to be more profitable per acre, at least with our farmers on the Canadian prairies in that context, which is really awesome to see too. I've been working with the same farmers for 20 years, beautiful crops. Their land seems to get healthier every year and they're economically sustainable. And they have something which their kids are interested in and taking over because they don't see mom and dad just stressed out all the time because of financial worries. They see an actual profitable, successful business that they can take over. So that's incredibly gratifying. Like I just,
that's great. That's
yeah.
totally great. What about I've definitely been to farmers markets and they say they're organic, but
I was just going to ask this question.
Yeah.
And they say they're organic, but they can't, haven't paid for the certification. Like, is the certification cost prohibitive? And like, what would you say to those those farmers?
So it depends how big or small your farm is. If your farm's relatively small, maybe it's cost prohibitive.
What's considered small?
You go to the farmer's market and you're selling, under $100,000 a year of product. And, that's a really interesting question. And I'm not the arbiter of what small or large is. Yeah. And I don't think anybody is. I was on the board of something called the Domestic Fair Trade Association. It's really awesome association of farm workers, farmers, food companies. And we tackled that. Like, what's a family farm? Define what a family farm is.
Yeah.
And we couldn't. So you can look at that as like something negative or defeat, or you can look at it as agriculture is so varied and there's so much diversity in it. And that's a good thing because it's going to take all sorts of levels of farms to create these, local supply chains and these or regenerative supply chains. So I have mixed feelings about your question about the farmers markets. So if a farm's totally transparent, they're like, come out to our farm, check it out. There's a lot of farms like that. And a lot of farms say, look, I have a direct relationship with consumers. I don't need certification. I'm totally transparent. I've been selling to, and the proofs of the pudding, taste my carrots. Look at this produce. It's beautiful. It's like, tastes great. It's like, and then I'm like, well, you don't really need certification, but for example, if you're buying oats on the shelf on Sprouts in Southern California and it's from Saskatchewan, you need the certifications.
Right.
So the longer the supply chain is, the more you need certifications. Now, I do encourage farmers at the farmers market that aren't certified to get certified to join the organic community. It is a community. It has an ethic. There's a lot of great people in it, a lot of great farmers. It's a knowledge network also, and there's a lot of consumers that support it. and would like to see farmers go that way. And so I look at the cost and go like, well, how much is it really going to cost? And then, so how much more do you have to increase the price of your, cauliflower or your produce to cover that expense? And, they may find it's really only like a few cents a pound over the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that this model that you guys have created works with any kind of product or any kind of produce? Product.
Absolutely. So I have a really interesting project that I'm working on now. So part of FarmerDirect's brand development is, what are we going to support? Like, so what's the cause? A good example of a brand that does that is Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
So they grew to becoming the largest natural product soap company in the US, and because of, I think, their cause promotions. And they're the grandson of the founder, who's the CEO or Cosmic Engagement Ambassador. Now, Cosmic Engagement, what's the O stand for? Organizers.
That's the best title ever.
Yeah, right. He's super charismatic guy, brilliant marketer. So of course, that helps with the brand. But at the base of it, though, it's their cause marketing worked, and people want to see that. And so FarmerDirect has to develop cause marketing. And so what we want to promote and support is basically organic farmers, of course, and soil building. So we have this project, and this goes back to your question, in Kenya, where Mount Kenya Organic Farmers Co-op, they have a business plan where it's a direct to consumer model where they have refrigerated carts, so they can put the produce and stuff and literally in these little carts and deliver them directly to consumer in Nairobi. And part of that is there's the produce hub, right, where the members of the co-op bring all their produce into the co-op's produce station. It gets like washed and packed and weighed, and farmers get paid and stuff like that. Totally. The vertical integration on the farm, or some sort of local yet central processing for the farmers, with a focus on real food and direct distribution to consumers, households, restaurants, the grocery stores. Absolutely. That's the future. It has to be.
Yeah, right. It has to be. We're just going to keep getting sick.
Yeah, and like the conventional produce in grocery stores, it looks nice, but it's garbage. No wonder kids don't eat their vegetables. So this whole concept of getting in touch with our food again, it's like, quality doesn't matter. So for example, you're making a tomato sauce. Well, when you have great quality ingredients, over time, and that sauce is simmering and the flavors are getting deeper and richer, and right. So it's like really getting back to that. You're a chef, right? So you're like, absolutely, you must have frustrated you to no end that people are just like, oh, whatever, ingredients, quality.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Like the concept of like what vegetables should taste like, or grains should taste like, or legumes. I mean, even just like the difference between a dried pea versus like a fresh field pea, right? I mean, like those two flavor contracts are like they're so different and delicious at the same time. I mean, I actually at one point in my career, I lost a job over tomato sauce.
Yeah.
And like me making it from scratch from tomatoes from the farmer that I would buy it like every Tuesday, rather than making it out of a can. And like I stood on my soapbox and at this restaurant, like we were very successful, and I was like, I'm not going to do it to save a little bit extra time. Like there's other ways we can save on labor, but like I'm unwilling to compromise when it involves the food.
Yeah.
Like let's find different cleaning mechanisms or something. Like there's something else we can do.
That's awesome story. It's almost like now it's like, sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and it was in a location where we were like in the salad bowl capital of the country.
Yeah, I mean,
like
Monterey, California.
Yeah. You could walk out and
the restaurant on Tuesday nights on Main Street was the biggest farmers market in the county for sure.
Yeah. And
I would buy as much produce as I physically could from like all the farmers, and we just couldn't get over the tomato sauce.
Wow.
I think it's too, though, and this is one thing I talk to businesses about. It's like quality, profitability, like people are always looking at their bottom line. So I feel like when you were talking earlier about the subsidies, it's like, sure, if we didn't have those, then the table would be a lot more balanced. Right. And we wouldn't be having this like dichotomy of, well, I can't afford good food because the other food, the crappy food, is cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
The subsidy thing is definitely like hurts this whole effort.
Yeah. And food's such an interesting space too, because people say that, but they spend $7 for a coffee at Starbucks. And it's
I
like,
know. I
Yeah,
know.
you know,
and do not
yeah,
care at all where
yeah,
the coffee bean came from. You know, what I
yeah,
mean, like
totally.
it's not important.
And so
Yes. Yes.
I think that's kind of a keystone of where food and addiction cross, right? And that's something that we
There you
haven't
go.
talked about. There's been articles, written in the New York Times. I think a big article came out about 5 years ago of a former food executive, who's food scientist. It's like, yes, we purposely formulate the food, salt,
To
fat, and sugar to get you
Yep.
addicted.
sugar.
And
Yeah.
it's like, wow. Yeah. So for people to really get healthy again, a lot of them may have to admit that they have an addiction, and it's to food. It's not
Yeah.
cocaine. It's not
Absolutely.
alcohol. It's not cigarettes, but it's actually just as dangerous. So
Sugar and salt.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also when you look at the big companies, these big conglomerations are getting bigger and bigger. The people who are making the seeds and the fertilizers are also the ones that are creating the medicine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're just keeping us sick so that they can
Yeah.
keep us sick with their medicine.
And that's really interesting thing to bring up, because this is one of the things in our society is like, well, here you go. It's obvious, isn't it? They're producing the agricultural chemicals that produce the shitty food, and they produce the pharmaceuticals that we take when we get sick. And people
Yeah.
are like, well, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. And it's like, well, like, is it so crazy that a bunch of executives got in a room and said, this is what we're planning? Because it makes a lot of sense. Now, the other thing is like, well, it didn't really happen that way. The miracle of modern agriculture and fertilizers, and then people started getting sick. So then we came up with the drugs because to help people. But these things don't work in isolation at all. And if you think they do, well, I have to ask yourself, how much do you believe in democracy? Because democracy is all about informed consent and informed citizenry. And so if you're willing to deny things that are right in front of you, there's not much hope for us. Sorry, I'm not trying to be a downer.
No, I was like,
Yeah.
I know, but it's a very important conversation, and it does and it can feel dismal at times. But I mean, I think with what you're doing and this model is incredible. I'm really curious, the plan. Is there a big plan for growth?
Oh yeah,
Or
well, this is the one of the things I'm going like, so what does growth look like, and where do I want to really go to? Like, for example, right now we're selling single ingredient products, oats in 1 pound bags or 25-pound bags for retailer shelf killer bins, chickpeas in 25-pound bags, red split lentils in 25-pound bags. So the question is, do we come up with like hummus, for example? And so
right.
where I'm at right now is like, what I really like, ideally, how this would work is that FarmerDirect basically has all of these ingredients to all these certification and traceability standards. And we sell these to a hummus manufacturer that, just incorporates the raw ingredients into their things, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Makes the most sense.
the reality of that, though, is there's tremendous amount of resistance to pay for this type of quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we haven't even launched our direct-to-consumer e-commerce yet, which we're doing in the late spring, early summer of next year. Then we're going to have to make the decision. Well, do we actually make the hummus? Because no one wants to buy our chickpeas to make the hummus. So maybe we have to make the hummus first. And then where the expansion really comes is once you do that and you go to a Kroger's or a Whole Foods Market or whoever and says, here's our hummus with all of the, right? They're like, well, put that under our label. I see that is the expansion. Holistically, the brand itself is really great as a bellwether, right? As a symbol. But to fund a national brand into the mainstream, we really have to look at that and decide if we want to take that risk, because it costs millions of dollars to do that.
Yeah, it's a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of food brands, and so for somebody trying to, build an ethical or regenerative food brand now, what is the first thing, or what would you suggest that they look into before scaling? Like, would there be their headaches with scaling?
Well, the first thing I would say is, why are you doing this? Like, really, like deep down inside, why are you doing this? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your ethic? Like, do you really know? Or are you just like, I just, it seems fun. I want to start a food brand, or I want to start a business, or I want to be self-employed, which is all fine. But it's like, it helps if you have a really like, what's your ethic, and understand that and know that And then you should roll out your business to that. Make sure too that your ethic is representative of a certain cohort. So regarding to food is representative of the LOHAS cohort. So lifestyles of the health and wellness, something like that, right? Apparently there's 50 million LOHAS consumers in the US. So
Yeah.
it's just like, what's your market? Why? Is there a need for your brand? And if you determine that there is, and if it feels some driving desire in you to do this, okay, great. And then I'd say, of course, I'm thinking from my perspective, it's like, if I do it now, because I kind of did differently, went out to Saskatchewan, and we're not necessarily local, right? We're selling our lentils to, Sarasota, Florida, all the way to Los Angeles and New York. But that's because of the particular agronomics of grains, right? They don't really lend themselves locally. Some do, right?
Mhm.
But you need a lot as opposed to produce or even livestock. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't grow local grains. And the U.S. used to have a vibrant local grain culture, which each county had their own varieties that were adapted to the climatic conditions and soil conditions in that county. So all sorts of different wheats, all sorts of different races. Anson Mills, Anson, Anson Mills. Do you know them? Yeah. So that guy, Glenn's his name. And I don't know if he's still there, but total visionary, absolute visionary of what he's doing. Essentially, he's went around U.S. counties and collected all these old varieties, and that was kind of contract with farmers and brought them back to life.
Mm-hmm.
There's an example of an awesome business, which some guy was like, yeah, there's a need. We have all these hybridized industrial varieties of grains, and they just suck. And so what did we do in the past? And so he found these, and so that comes to a quality. He sells directly to chefs too. So know your market. Do what exactly is your market. If I was to start again today, which I kind of did because it was only like 2025, we had all this different infrastructure and relationships, right? So, but if I start today from scratch, I'd really focus on direct to consumer. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you are good at creating content or you have people in your network that are good at creating content, that really helps. There must be integrity behind your brand, though. So you can have all the fluffy content in the world you want. Great. You'll probably do well. But once consumers find out that there's nothing really behind the brand, may not be good. So try to source local stuff, have the farmer central to your story. Focus on quality, quality, quality. First launch through e-commerce. Do it really like your expense side will kill you. So keep your expense side super low. And so what I mean about that, you have on the bills that you pay for your business, you have the expense side and you have your cost of goods side. So when you're starting out, don't have employees. It should be you.
Yeah.
Learn how to do everything. Get stressed out, have a breakdown, whatever you need to do, but drive through that and understand your business like nobody else understands it. Make sure that you have at least 25 to 40% margin, like gross profit margin when you're working with co-manufacturers. If you can produce the product yourself, even better. So it's just, you really got to keep your expense side low and make sure you can sell your product at a necessary margin to keep you in business. And
Sure.
then,
Sure.
you're going to have to scale as quick as you can to $1 million.
Mm.
You'd be surprised. But after all your certification costs, your transportation costs, any branding or marketing you did, your lawyer for, I'm sorry, not your lawyer, your accountant, your bookkeeper for year-end filing. We got to keep on top of all that too. The biggest mistake I see with entrepreneurs is that they're fantastic salespeople or they are really good at making a product. They always fall down on the administration side and specifically at bookkeeping and accounting, know exactly where every dollar went.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Absolutely.
It's
It
tough,
is.
right? But once you
Yeah.
get to a certain
Yeah.
point, it's like anything. You're a carpenter, you apprentice first, and then you get to a point where you can
Yeah.
build a house. It's no different
Yeah.
with a business owner or entrepreneur. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. So when you think about the next like 5 to 10 years, what needs to change in the food system for businesses like yours to truly succeed?
the biggest thing, because the market's there, the distribution is there, the farmers are there. In Canada, especially, startup or young companies are always starved of cash, right? And I'm not saying just give people money because they want to start a business.
Sure.
There's a reason they're starting cash because most businesses fail, right? But
Yeah.
I think there needs to be funding in place when people, and I guess this is self-serving, but when people are going to develop supply chains directly with farmers, if you can create structures where there's part farmer ownership, that should be really encouraged. And there's all sorts of agricultural lenders out there that should look to that and look to support that. So, this has to be funded. And so that's the biggest thing. I was commenting to someone the other day, is like, it's crazy in my mind, because there's a massive opportunity, especially in the US, to transition from industrial beef to regenerative pastured beef. Investors and large companies, whoever, still haven't got their head around it. They're still thinking like, okay, well, we need to invest money into this one massive plant, so we have economies of scale. Instead of, no, we need to invest in 100 different small regional plants that cater to pasture-based agriculture, that are differentiated based on quality and ethic. That's what we need to invest in. And by the way, the farmer should have a portion of that ownership. And it's like you're speaking Greek to them. Just like, well, we don't want to share, which is absolutely stupid, because you're not sharing because you're altruistic. You're sharing because that's what's required to create these supply chains. That's what's required to, and sharing ownership with farmers. And that's what's required to have steady supply into your supply chain. And that's also what's required to properly differentiate and market your beef from the other beef. Someone actually did that. And there's examples of groups that are doing tremendous business with a differentiated product, a more expensive beef product that's pastured, more ethical, humane. It's just better. But there's not that, we haven't had that just huge momentum. Like, the pendulum's not quite about to swing, but it will, right? So, companies like FarmerDirect, part of that, trying to push that. It's going to take thousands of companies and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of farmers. And I'm really encouraged what the next 10 years will be, partly because as things get more desperate, then people look to what really works. Yes. So one of the things that's super frustrating, man, I didn't get to this, and I just like, what's going on? So I just explained, like, for me, I'm looking at this and going, it's a huge opportunity to basically take over beef. Like, let's maybe not 100% of it, but good 20 to 30% chunk of the meat market from the large packers. We have all that consolidation. And you do that by partnering with farmers and ranchers. And you're doing that too because there's a tremendous amount of ecological benefit to proper rotational grazing, multi-species grazing, more grass, getting away from the whole feedlot system. There's just tremendous, even though people are arguing against this, was crazy to me. There's tremendous utility in that. That's the solution. That's the technology. But now we see, like, people instead of that are like, well, cows bad, fake meat good. So they invested $3 billion into Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger, right? Or Impossible Foods and I think Beyond Meat. They lost it all. They're going to continue to lose it all. And it's like, why didn't you, like, even if someone took $1 billion of those dollars and invested it with the ranchers, you'd be so far ahead. And so, whatever. And then now it's like, well, precision fermentation, cultivated meat. And it's like, why don't you understand both of those, along with Impossible and Beyond, have lost nothing but money, like nothing but billions. They're going to continue to lose billions. You're trying to shove technology down a cultural throat, if you know what I kind of mean. People don't want cultivated meat. They don't want precision fermented meat. Like, why are you trying? You're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. What people want is they want true sustainability. They want pastured meat. They want farmer control. They want transparency in their supply chains. After almost 2 to 3 decades of like heavy marketing, basically meat bad, plant-based, veganism is still only 2% of the US population. It's not, you're not going to get to the level of consumer adoption where you make an impact. I'm sorry, you're just not, right? So how about we do the right thing, get your head out of your greedy ass, because we know why you're investing in the cultivated meats and precision fermentation, because you're hoping that it's that one company that breaks through and you're going to make 100 times your investment. It's like, if that's your attitude, look in the mirror, you're the issue with the world. 100%. When you're tucking your children into bed at night, tell them you're the issue with what's wrong in the world. And I'm pretty passionate about this, and I'm actually super pissed off because it's like, no, we have the solution. You want to stop soil eroding. You want to
Yeah.
you get carbon and nitrogen back into the soil cycle.
Yeah.
We have lost 250 billion tons of two equivalents into the atmosphere from industrial land management. So 2,500 billion tons every year from fossil fuel use. We release 50 billion tons into the atmosphere. Okay, so where should the focus really be? And for me, the focus should be on land management. If we want to hit our greenhouse gas goals, regardless of whatever you think about the climate change, and this is, I'm going to say something super controversial that I really want people to think and look into the science of it. The biggest effect on climate is the sun. That's what affects our climate. Okay. And human beings, by doing stupid things like destroying habitat and whatnot, exacerbate the issue. But to be so arrogant to think that we are solely responsible for the weather on the earth, it's incorrect. What we need to do is work with natural cycle, understand the power of the sun, understand when our forests are healthy, when our oceans are healthy, when our soil is healthy, when it's retaining water, when it's doing all of these things, it helps mitigate how the sun changes, right? Basically, the energy that the sun's putting off. And right now, the sun apparently is putting off a tremendous solar flare, which affected all sorts of electromagnetic, electronics and stuff like that. And I think it was 1890. There was a crazy solar flare, and it destroyed all the telegraph. There's a terminology to it. It was an incident, and it destroyed, literally fried all the telegraph poles and stuff like that. This probably will happen again. My point being is that the sun has a tremendous effect. Fossil fuels, sure. CO2 in the atmosphere, sure. But what we really need to focus on as we transition away from fossil fuels is the integrity of our habitat. That is going to, in the short term, get all that stuff out of the atmosphere and back where it needs to be while we figure out how to get off fossil fuels. Instead of impoverishing ourselves, trying this unrealistic net zero by 2030 and all this crap, which we're just not going to be able to make.
Never achieve that.
Fix more than really looking at a holistic, everything's connected and we need to pay attention to how the habitat.
And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but let's admit this, right? Larger organizations with tremendous resources and power, they influence the public discourse. I don't think anyone would disagree with this. Okay. Rockefeller Foundation, right? They divested out of fossil fuels into, electrical battery systems, rare earth minerals and stuff like that, right? And if people don't know the Rockefellers, John D. Rockefeller, the first large basic oil magnate in the US, incredibly unethical person. That's why they started the Rockefeller Foundation, because he was feeling incredibly guilty. So he started giving his money back. But the point is, they started the fossil fuel supply chain for the most part in the US, and they're transitioning to the rare earth minerals and batteries. And so this is why all of the focus is on fossil fuels, right? As opposed to, well, let's actually partner with farmers. Let's partner with ranchers. We'll have way more of an effect and get way more of those greenhouse gases back into the soil cycle, back into the forest if we do that. And yes, while we're doing that, technologies to transition off fossil fuels are fine and necessary, but how are we being manipulated? Really? Just, accept, just as a thought exercise, just accept that you're being manipulated. So what does that look like? Why are people manipulating you? How are they manipulating you? What are the stories that you see in the press, which you're like, yeah, there's bias there, probably manipulated. I'm saying it's just an exercise. Because when you go to that place, it triggers people's egos. No one wants to admit that, oh, I'm being conned, I'm being lied to. My belief systems are actually bullshit. Really hard stuff for everyone to get for real, excuse my language, and start doing the things like partner with farmers, just so
well, it's paying attention to the environment. It's paying attention to the environment, your water, your
what
air.
It's telling you.
Yes, that is the foundation of it, right?
And back to, part of where you're coming from is the water and the water management, and then soil and water management. And they've shown Institute, amazing 50 plus year side by side agricultural study, organic agriculture in a conventional plots. And they've demonstrated that organically managed soil absorbs a tremendous amount of water, like 20 times more.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
then you have all your issues with flooding, right? Well, you have organically managed soil, you have way less flooding. I like to tell people too that look at the Gulf of Mexico. Like, we don't even fully account for the unintended consequences of conventional agriculture. So, for example, all that
Yeah.
corn belt, all
The
that soy,
runoff.
all that runoff, yeah, down the Gulf of Mexico. And they used to have a huge burgeoning shellfish industry, which was like amazing. And apparently it's about
Yep.
$2 billion a year economic loss because of the habitat
Because of-
destroyed. And then
Yeah.
added to that too, Hurricane Katrina, because of all the silt and that was pouring in from the Mississippi. Once it got past Florida, it kind of lost steam. But then once it hit the shallow, warm water, because that was near New Orleans and the Gulf, it picked up a tremendous amount of energy and just like bang, right? And
Right.
destroy that area. So like, how many billions of dollars of that? How many lives did that
Yeah.
destroy? You know, and it's like, we're not accounting for what's yield, actually, right? Well, if you count for yield in the Corn Belt, are you taking the $2 billion of shellfish off of that yield? Because you should, because that's a
'Cause you
direct,
killed
Yeah.
it.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Consequence. Yeah.
Super complex stuff. So don't want to like, intimidate people, right? So really getting
Very,
back
very
to,
deep.
yeah, right. Just getting back to, know your farmer. And if you
Yeah.
don't know your farmer, work with brands that know them and have appropriate testing, and you're going to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So
And not to necessarily talk about competitors, but you said, are there other operations like yours that are in the States, or are they mostly in other parts?
there's a few organic groups that are tested for pesticides. Ego Bar is one. Pauline, I forget her last name, but it's ZEGO. They're doing a lot of excellent work by creating similar supply chains that I am, working directly with
Okay.
farmers. She's awesome.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of USDA money to install these supply chains. There's another small brand that support gluten-free organic oat bars, awesome stuff. So there is some, but it's still very small, right? There's Timeless Seeds in Montana that does packaged lentils and stuff. They're awesome. That was started by a man named David Oines, OIE. I think absolute pioneer. He sold to Mad Agriculture. Mad Agriculture is a group that's doing some really interesting things. And there's always Organic Valley, who will always be just like amazing example of farmer cooperation. So when you go out there, I'm sure it's a little bit of the food industry, but they're out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate this conversation, Jason.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I know we went in some different directions, but I really enjoy this. Like, this is to me like where my heart is. Really.
Yeah, we're good.
Is to try to figure this stuff out. Yeah.
In terms of like your growth of like if your growth would encompass other products, the legumes, or going into like other industries with your model.
Yeah, so I told myself I wasn't going to talk about this, but you asked me directly. Right now, we're talking with the Real Organic Project. Are you familiar with them? And they're looking for brand champions. So if any brands out there that's interested, feel free to reach out to them directly. They're looking for brand champions that will take their raw ingredients and put it into their branded products. So I'm talking to them about like, okay, well, what would that be? How would that work? But I said to them that I don't want to do the traditional retail route of this first. I want to do direct to consumer first.
Sure.
And so we're working on a template with them to do that. But yeah, essentially, that's the great thing about the FarmerDirect brand. It's scalable.
Yeah.
We're even open to licensing the brand to the right company, co-packer or whatever that is going to follow like our protocols.
Right.
Nice.
Cool. Well, I know we could talk all day about this stuff, but I really appreciate your candidness and your openness to just let us know what's going on in the industry and with your business. So
I love talking
it's
to
been very
kindred
fun.
spirits too. So
Yeah.
it's always, you guys are right there with me in this agricultural evolution. I don't like the word revolution. I like
Absolutely.
evolution better because, you know, I want things to be
Yep,
I-
for
nonviolent
sure.
and
Yeah.
cooperative. So,
Right.
but yeah, so awesome.
Positive,
Thank
positive
you.
growth.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you again, Jason, for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh,
We
thank you.
appreciate you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
I am your host, Amy Hostaby, and I would just like to say that I am so truly grateful to each guest who takes the time to share their story, and to you, the listener, for being part of this community. This show is about learning out loud, connecting ideas, and amplifying the voices of people doing the real work of building a regenerative future. Let's keep turning up the volume on smart systems, bold ideas, and the businesses shaping what's next. So please join me and keep showing up, keep speaking up, and keep it louder than green. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.